So some terminology that you should know. Right off the bat, pixel. What exactly is a pixel? A pixel is a minute area of illumination on a display screen, one of many from which an image is composed. So this is a really good side-by-side example of a high resolution, high number number of pixels versus a low number of pixels. The higher number, the megapixels in a photograph, the better the quality. But a pixel is a single one of these squares. So a pixel just makes up one of these tiny little squares. Megapixel refers to 1,000,000 pixels. It is commonly used to describe the resolution of digital cameras. For example, a 12 megapixel camera is capable of capturing roughly 12 million pixels in an image. So the higher number of pixels, the higher number of megapixels you've got, the higher quality of the photograph that you've got. And where that comes into play is really when you go to make prints made. And I'll talk about that. I've got a couple of videos that talk about that. The higher the megapixel number, the more detail the camera can capture. Another term you should be familiar with is screen resolution. Screen resolution refers to the number of pixels that make up an image on your screen. The image that you're looking at, when you're looking at me or you're looking at this screen here, everything that you see is made up of tiny little squares of color. You can't see it, but if you took a magnifying glass or a loupe and put it on your screen, you could see the tiny little pixels. So the image on your screen is built up of thousands or millions, or in some cases, billions of pixels. The screen creates the image you see by changing the color of these tiny little squares. The screen resolution tells you how many pixels your screen can display horizontally and vertically. Many times the term PPI or DPI is used to describe it. So PPI stands for pixels per inch. DPI stands for dots per inch, but many times they're kind of used interchangeably. But as you can see, the lower number pixels that you have, the lower PPI or DPI that you have of a circle in this case, it's going to be more ragged. The higher the number, the smoother it is, and so on. So if we're looking at these two cameras side by side, or I should say these two smartphones side by side, this camera has a pixel resolution at 460. So it's 2532 by 1170 pixels that make up that screen. This one is a larger screen, so it has more pixels that make up the screen. The newer iPhones and the newer Samsung smartphones and so on, they have super high resolution screens, and a lot of the TVs that are being made right now are very high resolution screens. The higher the number of pixels, the clearer, the cleaner, the crisper the image.
These days, we're all photographers. We take digital photos with cameras, phones, and even computers. And some of us love to share them in printed form or on websites. But getting the most out of digital images means understanding how they work. Neil just started learning about photography, and for now, he's just using the camera on his phone. Recently, he took a photo that was his best work. He envisioned a big version of it on his wall for all to see. So, he saved it and took it to a photo center to have it printed. After taking a look, the photo guy showed him the options. The largest size he could print for this photo was 4 by 6. 6 feet wide seemed big enough to Neil. But the photo guy apologized with a chuckle. He meant 4 by 6 inches. Neil was crushed. The photo looked so good on his phone. He didn't understand why this photo couldn't be enlarged. Seeing his despair, the photo guy gave him a little lesson in digital images. Strangely, he started with blankets, just like at Grandma's house. He said to imagine a blanket that's 4 feet by 4 feet. When someone knitted that blanket, they used 8 packs of yarn. When the blanket is this size, it looks great and keeps you warm because the yarn is packed tightly together. But when you stretch it out to 6 feet by 6 feet, you can see the holes and it stops looking so warm. Stretch it even more and it looks more like a net than a blanket. His point was that yarn matters. Only blankets made from a lot of yarn can be stretched without becoming useless. He then explained that Neil's photo is like a blanket with too little yarn. He could stretch the image and make it bigger, but it would start to look blurry. This is because, like blankets made of yarn, digital photos are made of pixels. These are tiny bits of color that make up the image. When the pixels are stretched, the image quality suffers. After a bit of research, Neil found that his camera phone has a 1 megapixel camera, which means it captures 1 million pixels in an image. The image may look good on a small screen, but this number of pixels is only enough to print a small picture. For large prints, he would need a camera that captures millions more pixels. For example, a 5 or 10 megapixel camera, even on a smartphone, could capture more than enough pixels, especially if he learns the basics of lighting and composition. The only problem? Cameras and devices are expensive for Neil. For now, he'll just stick with his camera phone and even print photos at home. Who knows? One day soon, his wall may become a statement after all.
I think that analogy of the blanket and stretching the blanket is a really good way of describing how when you go to get a print, if you have a low resolution photo or a low megapixel photo, you're going to be limited to the kind of the size that you can print clearly.